The Black Fat Femme Podcast is a production of iHeartRadio and Dr. John Paul, LLC. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Black Fat Femme Podcast, where all the intersections of identity are celebrated. I am one of your hosts, John, and this week I want to start the show with some choice words for Miss Wendy's because, okay, so I'm going to say this. I know that they have now rescinded what they initially said they were going to do, right? So I don't know, Joho, if you're familiar, if you've been following the interwebs, but Wendy's said at the beginning of this week that they were going to introduce surge pricing with their food.
What?
Are you
yes. Surge pricing?
Yes.
Are you what?
No, yeah, real talk. Wendy said that that's what they were going to do. Keywords, they said that's what they were going to do. They said at the beginning of the week that they felt like it was smart to introduce surge pricing into...
Are they delivering food? Like, have they become the DoorDash of...
surge pricing at the restaurant. So you could be on your lunch, go into a Wendy's, and because it was like $12.30, you could be paying $5, $6, $7 more for a meal.
What?
Because of the time. Yep, I'm not lying. I'm not making this up. This is a real story.
I'm actually gagged right now about this.
So because of the backlash, this morning when I was going through, because I usually read the news before I start my day, this morning as I was going through Apple News, they had said, just kidding. We're not going to do it because ultimately, we just don't think that it's good for our brand. But I've been fuck Wendy's ever since they started playing with the 4 for $4. Like, girl, how 4 for $7? Now it's 4 for $8, and it's like 4 for $10. Like, girl, it's a whole goddamn meal at this point. Like, I'm paying $12 for a small fry, some nuggets, and this really rink-a-dink burger. And just Wendy's, like, I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
You have rode for Wendy's for a long time. This is a slap in the face, honestly.
It really is. I was like, surge pricing. Like, girl, your food. And that's what I was telling someone this week. I said I could see if it was McDonald's, because McDonald's, they're that girl. Like, and I get a lot of crap from people I know who are like, you're killing yourself by eating McDonald's. You're not taking care. Screw you. I'm going to eat McDonald's because McDonald's is good. I don't care. Like, McDonald's is tasty. And if they were to say, oh, okay, we're going to introduce surge pricing because okay, McDonald's, okay. All right, girl, because your prices are always up and down anyway. But Wendy's?
Ooh, that's wild.
Wendy's?
Wow.
Nah, girl. Nah. And to any other brands that are thinking about doing this, don't. Like, it's just not a good look. It's not a good look.
What?
It's stupid. But anyway, I'm off my soapbox, but I just wanted to share that I got beef with Wendy's, and it's definitely a square patty. But anyway, how are you, Queen Joe?
Hold on, I have to look because I'm like, this is a wild. So they call so they call it. So I'm looking at an article from Fortune. They call it dynamic pricing.
Yes,
and that's what they changed this play a feature. What? Ooh, okay, I see how they walked it back. Interesting. Some people have put this is price gouging. Oh, Elizabeth Warren said this is price gouging, plain and simple. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, search pricing, dynamic pricing are used interchangeably. That is wild.
Yeah.
I cannot believe. Like, first capitalism really does ruin all, and that's just really all I gotta say about it. Wow.
Amen.
Wow. Okay.
Amen.
Ooh, fam. I'm gagged. It's Miss Gagarella. It is Jordan, aka Miss Joho. If you're nasty, or Miss Gajoho, because I am really shook. That's how I say, what's that chant go? It's like, I love being black. I said I love being black. I said I love being black. I said I love being black. The little chant moment. That's really how I feel right now.
Yeah.
We are recording y'all on March 1st, which is the day after Black History Month. We had a leap day this year, which was amazing. Yes, and I just I find so much joy knowing that both you and I spent the last evening of this month doing this, like the blackest things we could be doing. Like, I know you went to our friends Jared's and Trevel's historically black historically Black phrases live.
Mhm.
For me, I went we the Black Coalition, which we just rebranded to Black San Diego Black Pride, hosted our launch party last night in Hillcrest. Like I just love that. Like this was like. I feel like this has been the blackest month for me. Like I feel like I just been my blackest self. I am anyways. But I really felt it this year to be like I just want to be black as fuck 24/7 now. I
Amen.
mean, I always and again I always am, but like this year just hits different, and I feel like you and I just were both doing black ass things last night.
Mhm.
And I love that for us,
Mhm.
and I love that we did that on the last mystical night of this month of I guess last month now because now it's last month and I hate it for
Well, we
us.
can still celebrate Black women because
Yes.
we're
Oh,
going
I
into
know that's
Women's
right.
Month. So we can celebrate Black trans women,
Right.
we can celebrate Black women. And so that for me is what's also holding me of like, I'm gonna continue the
Mm,
reign of being Black. And so I did want to shout out, I was gonna say this for some of you who listen, if y'all know, I've been seeing these shirts. So well, one, Danielle Young. So last night, Danielle Young, I don't know if you know who she is, great writer.
mm,
Um, basically is that girl. She set the precipice for a lot of the folks like myself who are in media, and we have all pretty much
mm,
followed a lot of her. Basically, we followed in her blueprint. So we speak her
mm.
name for Women's History Month, but also she had on the shirt last night that said, "Steal money from white people." I need to know where she got that shirt because I want it. And then also, I saw another shirt on Instagram yesterday that somebody was wearing, and I actually posted it to my stories. It says, "Racism is stank coochie energy." I also need
Yes,
that
I saw
shirt.
that. I was
Yeah.
like that.
So if
We
any
need
of the
the merch,
listeners,
y'all.
yes, if any of the listeners know where I can get any of those shirts, I definitely am going to need it. But again, I wanted to just say Danielle Young, she won last night in the LA on the LA show. And so, yeah, for those of you who were there, I saw Shar, I saw Never Ending Nina, Ryan, who's been on the show,
Mm,
a friend to the show, Travell, Jarrett, all of the babies, y'all did that.
mm,
Y'all did that. Like when I looked over because I was actually there with James. And again, Dr. Simmons has been on the show before. I looked over at James and I said, "Oh, baby," I said, "the production on this is amazing." They were like, "Yeah,
mm.
actually, it really is." And so it just, and then I saw the photos from your event and it looked like a grand old time. I know Amber St. James
True.
was there.
Mhm,
That's my baby. Down, down, down. I know we're giving a lot of flowers right now, but yeah, you are so right. Like Black
mhm.
History Month, the way we ended it, it's so cool. I'll say this and then we can get on with the show. It is
Yeah.
so we're all dealing with, and this is something me and James were talking about as we were walking to the car last night. There are a lot of people who are losing their jobs. There are a lot of people who are losing opportunities. There are a
Yeah.
lot of people who don't know what the next couple of months or pretty much the rest of
Mm,
this year is going to look like for them. And it's really cool to still see Black folks making the best out of a lot of really bad situations, right? And so it's just
mhm,
that's kind of what I'm sitting with. Like there was a moment
mm,
last night where everyone was kind of saying that on the stage, like we're all dealing with a lot of like uncertainty and like even for us, right? Like there's uncertainty for me around my book. There might be uncertainty about you and what your next
mm.
few months might look like in your career. Like we're all dealing with a lot of uncertainty. But yet we're still showing up and we're still being amazing. And it just, I want to shout out Black people for that. Like we are such
Yes.
a relentless people.
Ooh, see, again, I love being Black. I said I
I
love being
love
Black.
being Black. Yeah.
And
That's
we're
pretty
gonna
much what
and
it's given.
today
Hmm.
yes, and today we're gonna kick it off as we always do, giving praise to our Black sister, our Black queen, Miss Tisha Gamble. And our
Amen.
opening segment still here. And as an appetizer, accoutrement to today's discussion, which will give y'all a little hint, I'd love to ask you, what words do you
Mm-hmm.
use to describe yourself, and how has that shifted over the years? I'll say for myself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking a lot about, like, my Instagram bio in this way because I like the bio was, like, what people use to describe themselves, and I have changed it before. I'm thinking about changing it again, but currently, I think it currently has, like, fat like, I think it says fat, queer, Afro Jew. Before, it used to say fat, Black, queer, Jewish, and all these things, and I think those were words that I think my first got on Instagram were began, like, branding myself, right? I think I
Yeah.
would say, like, Black and queer was what I would say, or mixed Black and queer, and it's changed when as I stepped more into my Jewish identity, my Jewishness, and celebrating that. I stepped into it more when when I got more into the, like, body positive and then fat positive and fat liberation work to really incorporate fat. I never used the term Afro Jew until a few years ago when someone had on a trip had introduced it to me when I was saying, like, oh, I'm Black and Jewish. I'm like, oh, like you're an Afro Jew. I was like, what's Afro Jew? They're like, oh, the same way as you say like Afro Latino or Afro this, like Afro Jew. I was like, okay, I'm actually kind of here for that because it gives to me, it doesn't like it. Sometimes the words matter and the way you use them matters, right? So when I would say black and Jewish or black comma Jewish, it would be like ones in front of the other, but the Afro Jew was a hyphen, and that to me
Mhm.
feels more together. So I really like love using that. So I feel like now when I'll say fat queer Afro Jew, um, to me it's important that my my ethnic identities are together, are together in that in the hyphen.
Yeah.
Um and the it's interesting because I say fat first or say queer first. Sometimes it changes with each other, and I don't always know if I always put like a significance on what comes first. To me, it just sounds better off the tongue. Fat queer Afro Jew versus queer fat Afro Jew. Like it just sounds better off the tongue.
Yeah.
But those are how I use that's what I use to describe myself now. And I feel like it's at a place where I feel really comfortable and really joyous with it. Like it makes me
Yeah.
feel really good to use that combination of words. I'm sure it might change in the future. And maybe it'll change to something entirely different, but that's what I feel right now. But how about
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I have not in a while. It has been, I'll say the idea of framing yourself around words is and that's why obviously the title of this episode is words mean things, right? Shout out to Crystal
Mhm,
West.
mhm,
Like yes, words have meanings, and I think oftentimes you hear certain words in bad context of yourself, right? So, like, growing up, I struggled with the word queen, and now I like to refer to myself as
mm.
one, right?
Yeah,
I
okay,
struggled with the
yes.
word obviously, I still struggle with the word fat, and it's funny because even last week, I had this conversation with my therapist, right? Now having to have conversations about, my actual weight in relation to my blood sugar, and my having my doctor check up on that and all of that, like
Mm,
it's having to reaffirm kind of this notion of, well, there's still more to me outside of just being fat, right? And while I'm dealing with
yeah.
like blood issues, that has nothing to do with my fatness. My therapist, my doctor has been very transparent in saying it looks like you have this issue because your mother and your father both had it, and it probably was going to come for you regardless of what you did,
Mm,
right? So there's all of
mhm,
these intonations and all of these ideas, that we have around these words, right? Even what it means to be black versus what it means to be African American, right? I love being black, like you said
mm,
earlier. Um,
mhm,
and African American, I struggle with that word because I know what it means. I know why people use it. There's all these things, right? But I will say that what I put in our show notes, I said I think for these days, I like to refer to myself as old because I do like to be in bed by a certain time. I do enjoy a certain noise level. If I feel like people are too loud, I'm gonna tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to bring that down." I'm getting into my old season, and I'm fine with that. I'm very
yes,
much okay with these
yes.
grays that are coming out my hair. But seriously, if we're going to talk about being black, fat, and femme, right, and reclaiming those three words, I like to think of those words and tie kind of into this really beautiful bow of what I like to think of myself as relentless. And for years,
Mm,
I genuinely would
mm,
say, "Oh, I'm resilient," or "Oh, I've been able to get over this," or "I'm this," or "I'm that," or "I'm going after stuff," and blah blah blah. But I think with using the word relentless, right? I use this word a lot to talk about myself because it really does describe not only me, but I would say us to a T, right? We
mm,
have
mhm,
and we've had
mhm,
these conversations both on the mic and off. Both me and you have been handed some really fucked up cards in life at certain points and times in
mhm,
our lives, right? Whether it be with our family, whether it be with like, the life, the world, how we landed in this spot, right? There are all of these things. But I think when you think about the word relentless and you really kind of frame it from this notion of no matter what people say about you or what people try to do to you, what you might be
mm,
going through, good or bad, you still show up and you give life the best thing that you can give it, right? And so I think for me, I feel like for both of us, and I feel like I can speak for both of us now and saying that we, sis, like we continue to get through and we continue to inspire others to get through.
Mhm,
And so when
mhm.
I say we're relentless as Black fat femmes, right? Yes, I'm Black. Yes, I'm fat. Yes, I'm a femme. Yes, I'm queer. Yes, I'm a queen. Yes, I'm all of the things that a lot of people call me. And even some people may call me annoying. People may call me boisterous. Some people may call me money hungry. I don't know. You could call me. I always like to tell you, you can call me anything you want, just put doctor in front of it.
Oh,
But I say all of that to
yes.
say,
I know that's
you know me, I'm gonna get these jokes off. I
right.
I think that it's a beautiful thing when you can kind of own, and I think that's the phase that I'm in. And I was telling James this at dinner. I was saying I'm in this phase now where instead of trying to be perfect or trying to be quote unquote everything the world is saying I need to be, I'm just kind of starting to accept that I'm like a beautiful mess. And there's so many
Mhm.
things about me that make me amazing, and there are things about me that make me not amazing. And I'm working on those things, and that's the best I can do. And so that relentlessness, right? The relentlessness to make myself a better person, to make my world better, to make other people's world better. That is who I am in jest. So yeah, that's it.
Yes. Mm,
Mhm. That's that on that.
mm.
All
Thank
right,
you,
y'all.
thank you.
Yes, and thank you for asking that question, because I mean, I know we can go for hours talking about this, but I think we sometimes get so caught up, like that word, here come that word again, minutia. We get so caught up in the minutia of life, we don't take time to really think about like who are we and what the things that we call ourselves or we tell ourselves, what
Mhm,
does it mean?
mhm.
But I definitely think that we're in a really beautiful spot right now to really talk about that. So with that being said, we are going to pay some bills, but when we get back, we're going to go ahead and open up this here library dictionary so we can dive into some words. We'll be back in a second.
Welcome back, fam. Today's talk is inspired by a panel I was recently on and the conversation that ensued from the talk and on social media. So,
Mhm.
in the panel, we discussed the use of the word queer as a term that encompasses identity, or rather, whether it actually does or does not. There were
Mm.
some audience members of a different generation that did not feel like the word queer, that did not like the word queer, and felt as if we were forcing people to
Mhm.
use it,
Yeah.
and then shared that generationally it was still harmful to them. So I went on social medias and asked my community on Instagram, and they had some interesting answers as well too. So before we get into those, I want to ask you first, John, what is your relationship to the word queer?
All right. So for the parasocial girlies, I get it.
Parasocial.
I will say, I will say, I think the word, so it's almost kind of like the word, again, and this is going to be hard because I do not like this word, but and I actually, well, I won't say I don't like it, I don't mind it, I just don't like saying it. It's kind of like the word
Mm,
faggot, right? The word,
mm,
butch queen, like there are all of these words that kind of get given to you once you become who you are, right? And so like the word
mm,
queer, I had to kind of re-fall in love with it, kind of in the ways that, and again, shout out to women that are in my life, right? I've heard a lot of women talk about the B word, the bitch word, right? How they've had to like relearn
mhm,
it and had to like kind of renege it, or even the word nigga, right? Like how we've had to
mm,
how to kind of look at that word, and there's so much. So again, all of these words are words that were meant to demean us, and a lot of us have reclaimed them. And I think for me, kind of queer is in the same vein for me, right? I had to fall in love with the word. It's because again, when people yell it at you as something derogatory, whenever you hear the word, it kind of takes you back to that place, and you're like, I moved on from that, right? But in
mm,
the process, I will say, in the process of doing my own research, the process of me doing my own relearning, and also the process of me growing, I have started to understand that word as to be odd or to be different. And I love
mm,
that. Like, I personally
mhm,
love the idea of being queer because I've always said I'm Black and queer. And so my experience does not look like your traditional white girl who's LGBTQ, right? My
Mhm.
experience is never going to look like, especially being a big girl, my experience is never gonna look like that person who walks into the club and, is clamored over, right? Like, I've had to basically how I wouldn't say I'm lost for words, but I'm just trying to pick my words carefully. I've had to basically learn how to lasso in the confidence to show up as me, right? And so the word queer for me is a big fight to do that. I am different because of all the that I say I am different. Queer represents for me all of the things that the world hates, and yet I found ways to celebrate that. I found ways to show up in my true queerness and the joy in that, right? And I will say to an extent, I'll say this and then I'll throw it back to you. That's the premise of this show, right? To celebrate being different,
Mhm.
not falling into the lines or the traditional values of what the world expects, right? And so I'll even say this sometimes when I think about looking at our analytics or when I think about the fact that we don't get a lot of promo or we don't get a lot of people who clamor onto the show and say, "Oh, we love John and Joho." We are an example of a lot of the things that the world is taught to hate. And that's the reason why
Mm.
people struggle with the title of this show and struggle with us because we don't show up that way. Right. And so I think that that's a big part of being queer for me. Queer is walking into a room and saying, I'm going to shake this shit up and y'all going to have
Ooh,
to get it. That's it.
yes, yes. That's on period.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to ask you as well, do you feel like the word encompasses all identity though? And I mean that through a lens of like inclusion of gender. Because I struggle with this myself because I
Mm-hmm.
used to say queer as a truly umbrella term, like it to a truly umbrella term that was inclusive of trans identities. And now I use queer and trans because a friend who is trans pointed out to me that she would not use queer because she's a trans hetero woman. And
Mm,
so I'm curious, like I'm curious of your thought. Do you like and I asked this knowing that like the person on the panel, they queer for them was inclusive of gender identity as well too.
mm.
But I'm curious your thoughts on it.
No, to be to TBH, to be honest, I don't really have a lot of thoughts on it. I say
Mhm,
identify the way you feel comfortable, baby. For me,
mhm.
queer is very inclusive of everybody. But now I'm just in the place that I go LGBTQ mafia, right? Like we all everybody, everybody is everybody, right? And if you're queer, if you're the Q in the LGBTQ, come on down, come on down. And even if you're not, right? Come on down, come on down. I think we are, and again, I think so much of it is again, we get so caught up on words because people want to know what to call you. People
Mhm,
want to know how to box you in. People want to know how to judge you. And so I can understand someone saying, "Ooh, I don't subscribe to queer because I don't want to get locked into that." Like, right? Like I have
mhm,
my own identity. I have, there's a certain way I want to show up. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But I definitely do think that, for me personally, queer is very much I think our whole existence is different, right? Our whole existence, when we think about what makes, again, I personally will just say, I'm gonna say this. I want people to use things that make them feel good, even if they have to work through trying to reclaim it, right? So for
mhm,
me,
mhm,
Black feels good. Fat feels good. I've had to learn how to make
mhm,
fat feel good. And some people look at queer as a dirty word, and I think that that's why some people want to make the distinction, right? They don't see for them maybe somewhere in their lived experience the idea of queer is troubling for them, right? And so that's why
mhm,
they want to separate the queer and the transness, right? They want to separate and they want to be able to make sense of their lived experiences. But just some people can't see the beauty in the word, and I get it. Some folks feel like it fits them, and I think that's okay too. But as for me and my temple, I'm black, fat, and queer over here, and I'm okay with using the term. How about you?
mm. Ooh, one, thank you. Thank you for that because I feel I
Mhm,
feel very I feel very similar about letting people choose how they want to identify themselves. And I want to know when you said like some people think queer is a dirty word because that was definitely one of the feedback pieces that we got at the panel was that someone and the person kept saying it feels dirty and gross and harmful and nasty and disgusting. And it was interesting because another person on the panel responded
Mm.
with, you keep saying what that that's how this word feels to you, and that you think it's a dirty, gross, disgusting word. But you saying that now to me is like a knife in my chest, because you're
Amen.
saying that's
Mhm.
dirty, and how I call myself as dirty, disgusting. And it was an interesting. I was like, "Ooh, okay." I mean, it was an
The
interesting, like, back
girls
and
are
forth.
fighting. Yeah,
The
mhm.
girls is funny. I was like, "Oh my god, this is a while." But also, I mean, but also again, as somebody who uses the word queer, I was like, I get it. Like, I understand. That's how I feel too. And I think when I first came out, I came out as bi first, which is bad. Bad in the sense of I came out as bi knowing I was gay. Well, I guess I could say, like, believing I was bi, but like contributing to biracial in that frame, because then I ended up coming out as gay. So I'm sure people were like, "Why did you come out as bi if you were just gay?" And that really contributes to biracial. So I want to say that 15-year-old Jordan was not with the shit at that point. But
Right.
29-year-old Jordan is not the person today at all. But I started using queer probably in college. Like, I used gay for my high school experience, and then through some of community college. But I don't know when exactly I started using the word queer, but it just
Mhm.
sounds so natural to me. Like, it fit so well. Part of me wonders if it maybe you have been. It's interesting because I know we just this year is like the 10-year anniversary of the premiere of the show Looking, that came out
Mm, mhm.
on HBO. That I know some people have choice words about. Some people have really choice words about and choice thoughts about the show.
Mhm.
I think as a teen who watched that show, it was transformative in many ways, because one, it was like the gay, what I thought would have been the gay Sex and the City. 4 queer men in San Francisco, so not in New York, but in the place where I grew up,
Mhm.
and being like as queer selves. I believe they use the word queer, and then that kind of what I think that's a show that made me embrace the word more and really see the power in it. I obviously would have critiques of the show now for sure too, and I do, but to me it was a show that was really, really transformative for me and my queer identity as a younger person. I imagine for folks who were already fully fledged adults at that point probably had different thoughts about the show, and like in
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
um I think I've always loved the word queer, but I'm also a person who fits that demographic of someone who would use the word queer, right? Like, trends have been that people who are younger become more comfortable with different language and
Yeah.
different vernacular, or creates new ones. And so I think that I want to give gratitude to that. I think that'll be a great segue into our audience feedback.
Amen.
So we're doing something special for y'all today, which is really, really cool. So I guess I put the call on my story, asked folks their thoughts, and a few folks a few folks who are also black, queer, and trans folks, um, sent some thoughts, and we reached out saying, "Would you mind sharing more into a voice note or an email?" So we have 3 voice notes for you today and 1 email. And so we will play the voice notes. As I said, so a few voice notes. One will be read by us. I will just name from the beginning. This is folks who follow us on social media, and so I will say they do
Yeah.
tend to go younger. I would say we have someone who's from Gen X, but like we don't have anyone who's from like the boomer generation, or older than that. So I want to be
Yeah.
mindful and like know that obviously a lot of data collection are not inherently perfect. And if there's more spaces to hear from like elder folks, I would love to find out ways to do that as well too. Our first voice note comes from my friend Taylor Henderson, or Taylor Renee on Instagram.
I think there's a lot of agency in finding and choosing monikers, honorifics, and different terms that really give you agency and honor how you identify. For me, queer is not just an all encompassing term, but it shows people of the LGBTQIA plus community that I am also one of them. In past years, I have identified as bisexual, but there's also a lot of bi erasure, especially if you tend to lean towards hetero romantic relationships, which I have in the past. So for me, queer is definitely a word that empowers me to show myself to other people in that way. I think there's also something very valid to be said about reclaiming different words that in the past have been used as a slur and used against the queer community in so many words. So I think there's a power in reclamation and using the past to generate the future.
So I really appreciate Taylor's context of using queer as a way to feel safer for herself and others. But
Mhm.
I will name that I hold for her the frustration of having to counter by erasure. Like as I named earlier, right? Like 15-year-old me was definitely someone who erased, and now that's not who I am today. And I wonder if she had not encountered more erasure, would she still use the word "bi" today, right?
Right, right.
Or
Mhm.
did or was queer the actual natural evolution for her still? Like, I just
Mhm.
have that question for myself, with her, but I really loved her point about reclamation having agency in that.
Mhm.
Also loving the idea that queer becomes the term for anyone within the LGBTQIA+ community, like, that it becomes this word that becomes the piece of safety for them. So, just loved her response.
Yeah, and I will also take this, I love the idea that for them, this word empowers them, right? So,
Mhm.
that's the thing I think we
Mhm.
have to really think about, like, what words empower you? I mean, obviously, Black Fat Femme is what empowers us, right? But for some other
Mhm,
people, some
mhm.
people look at fat as a derogatory word, or even femme as a derogatory word, but it is about that
Yep.
empowerment piece, and I love that they highlighted that, in their response. Mhm. All right. So for the next one, not gonna lie, I'm really excited about this one because it's something that I feel like we're gonna be doing a lot more often. And as we can like, again, as we're getting more and more feedback about the show, and as we're wanting, we really want to include other people into this. And so this actually makes me really excited that we're including the voices of our listeners into the show because we are a family like a giant tree. Okay, I can't
Giant
sing I
tree.
can't sing
Come
anymore
on,
because
yes.
we'll get dinged
Your
for
tree.
copyright.
You're
Okay,
right.
so
Stop.
so this one comes from Sage or King Fem on Instagram.
So the thing about labels, not every label is going to feel right for you, right? Like the same way that we have the full alphabet mafia of LGBTQ plus, right? There's so many different labels within that acronym that aren't me specifically. And again, I don't have anything against saying like LGBTQ besides the fact that it's just a mouthful. So I prefer saying queer because I love using the term queer as like a catch-all term to say anything that's not cis or heteronormative. And I don't know, it feels good for me, and those are the labels that work. Like gay and lesbian, those aren't really how I view myself, but queer, hell yeah.
Okay, so what I love about this is, they talk about, and like I mentioned earlier at the top, they talked about labels, I feel it. I feel it. I've always felt, and I think people think I get, I feel a certain type of way when people go, "Oh, I don't like queer," or "I don't want to be put in that box." I don't want to be labeled. Baby, do you? I'm actually okay with that. But I definitely think, being able to say queer as a catch-all, um I think it really has something to do with this idea of you wanting to separate yourself from the heteronormativity and the heteronormativity of the world, right? You really want to be able to say,
Mhm.
like, just because I may present a certain type of way doesn't necessarily mean I live that type of way. So I get it, but I think really really what it comes down to, and kind of like Sage is saying, right? Queer is a great term, but also I love the idea of for folks being able to own it and have agency around the word and be able to use it in whatever context they feel comfortable with. So, shout out to Sage.
Mm. Yeah, love Sage. Sage does some dope work as well too, and I really appreciate I think to your point about the labels not fitting anyone is so important because that's again something that we experienced on the panel was there's this idea or feeling that we're trying to prescribe queer to people that we think everyone
Right,
should use queer, and
right.
there's an argument for me that I'm like, yeah, everyone should use queer because it's like makes sense today, but like that's also my own thing. I also don't ever want to get into the habit of prescribing for somebody what they should do. Like everyone's on what they should or should not do, and so I love this discussion because it also
Mhm.
raises to me like where I see the work going and how I see the work for myself.
Yeah.
For me, I use queer now because it is the word that I love to use, and the work that I'm doing is so for people who come after me to choose whatever word they want to use after
Mhm.
this, right? Like I actually have no jurisdiction or decision making power on how people after me, the Gen Zs or whatever comes or Gen Alpha,
Alpha.
whatever comes
It's
after this,
alpha.
right? Like I have no actual I have no involvement in what that will look like. So the work that I do now is so they can do it themselves. And like if they say queer is actually horrible. We never want to use it. I'm like, work, go off. I do not want to. I'm the person that tells you that you can't use it. Like that's really
Right,
great. And
right.
so I think the thing of labels and people choosing their own is helpful because it then reminds us that we're not here to prescribe things to each other, right? People
Amen.
prescribe things to us for our entire existence, and we can choose
Mhm.
to say, I will use this, and you can use that, and they both exist. They actually don't have to be mutually exclusive at all. So, love, 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 Sage. Our last note comes from Broderick or Savory Exposure on
My
Instagram. He also runs
baby.
he also
Mhm.
runs against a Peloton account. If you don't follow him as well, we love him for that.
Yes,
Um,
God.
Hey BFF. I am a member of Generation X and I use the term gay. I am a gay man and I like the happiness and the levity of that word. I remember back in the 90s when there was a trend among black men who love other men to use the term SGL or same gender loving. Personally, this never fit with me. I just really like the word gay, and so that's what I continue to use. But I completely understand the trend toward using the word queer. It's just more all encompassing, and I feel like it is taking back that word that has had such a negative effect on many people. I also remember when there was a trend towards using the word SGL or same gender loving as opposed to using gay, but just never resonated with myself. So I really love to use the term gay, and I also welcome those that are in the queer community that have chosen words that best help them identify the community that they belong to.
Okay, so first of all, love, come on, Gen Xer. We love to see it. Love that he probably was like, I'm a Gen X person. And love, like, love, love, love how he explores the term gay for himself, but also, I mean, throws back to the 90s, right, which is the time when I was just a child. So I was like, okay, this is interesting with the 90s. And one thing I'll say about Broderick, I know Broderick grew up on the East Coast.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder, like, what may differ in language between West and East Coast in that way, too. But I did not think about or know like SGL as same gender loving as like the term that maybe
Yeah,
have been used
that is
before.
a thing.
And also interesting for him to name that at one point there was a trend toward using like SGL, but it still like it still became opposed somewhat and it never
Mhm.
like caught on that much and he himself never didn't resonate with it. So I
Yeah.
love that he still was like I like I choose the word gay for myself. But I also appreciate how he says I welcome those in the queer community that they have chosen words, right? Because then he's saying, I use gay and I will use gay, but
Yes.
I can accept and hold and appreciate that you can use this word and that you will identify within this word and as the community
Mhm.
itself. So just
Mhm.
really, really, really loved his response on that.
Yeah, and I wanna kind of, and this is just me being an ill Tahiti. I think so
Yes.
SGL, it was very much a way for folks to be able to kind of code or be able to it started off in research, and it was just a way when they initially
Mm,
started doing research for Black people, Black queer people, they needed a term that was going to separate them from gay because gay was a very much kind of like an umbrella term. So they used SGL as
mm.
a way to kind of that. And so over time, especially when you're talking about HIV research and you're talking about all of the research that goes into Black folks, that term. But I also will say that as someone who came up in the 90s as well, I saw a lot of M for M, which meant male for male. And so that was
Yeah,
another
mhm.
another thing that some folks will use or have monikers of and will say. But even and I wanted to say this earlier too. I appreciate that Broderick said that they just like the term gay, but I think for me, like that one of the reasons why I never really like leaned into the word gay was because I felt like gay was such a white word. And I felt like I never really got
Okay.
like the experience I had never lined up with gay for me, right? Like gay was always stereotypical white, you
Mm.
know, cis het presenting men who were, ripped and had it just very much giving xy.com. And if you know, you know. Right. So it never really resonated for me. And so that's why I started to lean into the word queer because I felt like, oh, queer is very much kind of safe for me in the sense that I'm different. My lived experience is different. I see myself as different. Okay, I'm good. So that's kind of
Okay.
where my head was.
I love that you said that, and I have to say before we into our last note, on the panel, Amber St. James was on the panel. with me as well. And actually, they had named that in the discussion too,
Hey,
like viewing this through a Black
nice.
lens, because so much of like the discussion that we're having as a name like feels very white centric, or
Mhm.
conversations that happen in white communities that are different than happen in Black communities. So I love that you, because I was like, oh, it's so interesting even for me, because I feel like in my in most of my Black communities, like we use the word queer, and we maybe haven't discussed so much of why we choose that over something else, or where or
Mhm.
how we feel to us as like Black folks in a deeper context. And I love that they name that and said like they use the word themselves because it fits them, but it's also a really imperfect understanding of who we all are as people, especially through a racial context. So I
Yep.
love that you name that, that gay didn't fit for you as because it was white. And I will say that even for myself, like gay, when I think of gay, I think of white gays. Like I never say,
Yeah,
if
the
I
oots
always think of
oots
white gays when
music.
I say gays as well.
Mhm.
No,
A lot of
what?
oots oots music. Oots 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 oots. That's what
Okay.
I hear when I hear the word gay, that's what it reminds me of. Oots oots
So
oots.
just on that point, I will say there is the I don't understand it for myself, but there is a niche, there is a group of like Black queer folks who also love the music too. Could not be me,
I'm one
but
of them.
I love that for
Yes.
them, and I've realized I'm like, oh, you know what, there's a market here, and I think that everyone should be able to do what they want to do. But I also am like the music sounds very white to
Yeah,
me, so
I'm very much so I just gave myself away, and it's funny because I actually have to ride my Peloton. I have to actually ride today because I haven't had a chance to get to it. But I'm really in the mood to do an EDM ride. So yes, I'm going to give it away that I am also one of the girls who enjoys a good. Like Usher, everybody was going. I know it was total tangent, but that's what the show is. People were going off about Usher doing "Oh My God" at the Super Bowl, and when "Oh My God" came on, I just started dancing because
Oh,
that's my
it's a
jam.
bop.
Baby,
It's
let me
a
love you,
bop.
child.
You know,
Hey,
it's a
there's
bop. We
so
can't be mad
many
about it.
ways to love
To
ya. I
love, yeah. Mm.
love that damn song. Anyway, okay, back to the business, honey. So we have one last response. This is actually from your brother, Daniel. And no, his name is not Daniel Daniels. His name is Daniel. They have different last names. I'm not gonna put his last name on blast. But is his pronouns he? I just wanna make sure I get his pronouns
Yes,
right.
yes, yes,
Pronouns he?
yes, he is
Okay,
he,
so
him.
he says, "America has a problem, Beyonce, Queen Mother, on the term queer. I didn't understand my sexuality fully until I was an adult. The terms gay and straight were all I knew growing up and neither fit well enough to use except in those moments before coming out where straight was the default. Being black and Filipino, it took me years. Wait, pause. I didn't know he was black and, Filipino.
Latino. Latino. Yes, he's Black and Filipino, yes.
Filipino. Well,
We
how
are
about that?
multi we are a
I know that's
multiracial
right.
family,
Your
yep.
daddy said, you know
My
what? We're
daddy
gonna
said,
tag your
everyone
daddy.
everyone under the sun,
Your
okay?
dad
No
was like,
no
your
race
dad,
was safe from this man.
the
He knows him the
United Nations.
most.
I know that's right. Okay. Back to the reading. Sorry, it was such a tangent. It took me years to realize that I didn't have to be straight, that being called a faggot or fairy wasn't a social death sentence. Now at 35, I found that I'm grateful for the reclamation of the term queer. I use it to describe myself to let folks know I'm a part of the LGBTQIA LMNOP mafia, regardless of the space I'm in. I'm grateful I've been fortunate enough to see a time and place where terms like faggot, fairy, or even queer can carry an actual death sentence. This
Don't
isn't
carry. Don't
Oh,
carry.
don't. Sorry about that. Don't carry an actual death sentence. This isn't true for everyone, everywhere, and I acknowledge the fact that though I may use queer to describe myself, others may prefer a different term, and like pronouns, I call you whatever makes you comfortable. I know that's right. This is especially important as some terms may be triggering. Calling me a faggot will have me ready to fight, but I hear it within the community every now and then, and I have to accept it for those who identify with it. Though queer might be personal umbrella term and it feels inclusive to me, I think it's important that we still ask folks what they prefer before covering
Mm.
them with our own umbrellas. You know what? I know that's right. What are your
He's a
thoughts on that?
writer.
Mhm.
First of all, he's a writer. He's a he has degrees in English, so he's
Okay,
been to
okay,
PGCU's,
okay.
baby. I'ma first do a slow clap for
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
brother since day one has asked to be on the podcast
Yeah.
and finally is on it. And I bet still will not listen to this show, but
Probably
I
won't even know we
digress.
read it. Probably won't
That
even know we
part!
read it.
But
What a
in
moment.
all what a moment. I literally would just spam the fuck out of him. I'm gonna say, my nigga, we have read your thing. You better listen to this shit, or I will
Yes.
cancel you from now on.
Forever. You will
But
never get an
okay,
invite back.
forever. But in all seriousness, him and I haven't even talked about our journeys to this word together. So it really is special to hear his words like this and understanding his own journey. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, like we came out, um, I we came up to each other at the same time when we were both much younger, and I was high school, but he was already in college. And we had come out to our dad together as well too.
Yeah.
So it's actually, I like, as I said that, I'm like, oh, I actually have I have like a little bit of like emotion coming through my through my body. Wow. Um, like, it actually is really special to read this because I think we also, because we came out together, we kind of just like stepped into it ever together as well too, right? Like there was no discussion or debrief into like how we were becoming. We were just already being and being together in that way, like being in the same space and being who we are, like, the space we occupy together. So it's special to hear this and to to read that from him, especially again, like, all again, like, for him being black and Filipino, right? Like it's two communities where queerness or homosexuality may not always be seen as good, normal, or quote unquote like pure, right? And so
Yeah.
it's also special knowing, knowing his family, a family that I grew up a lot around too. And now that I like whenever I visit, he lives as part of his family. When I visit, I see them as well too, knowing how embracing they are of his queerness and my queerness. And so
Yeah.
you really appreciate that. I also appreciate how he was so right about how these words may not carry a death sentence in the same way. For some, it
Mhm.
still does, and that's true. But I agree of like before it felt like a death sentence, both physically and emotionally,
Yeah.
and mentally too. And so today that power the power is not as much there anymore for those words for some people,
Yeah.
not for all people, because I want to give respect to like to folks like Next, who was killed by their classmates. And I'm sure
Yeah.
words like this have been used as part of the death sentence as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it was special to hear that, special for you to read that, special to know that he's a part of this show and episode in this way too.
Amen.
How about you? Do you have any thoughts
Yeah,
about it?
so I honestly, no, I feel like your brother said it really well. And
Mm.
it's not that I don't resonate with it. And I kind of want to save some of my responses because one of my
Mm.
responses I have is going to feed into segment 2. So I'm gonna
Okay.
hold that, I'm a parking lot it, but I will say that I do appreciate them noting the fear that comes around using these words, right? Especially in public,
Mm.
because I think we don't talk enough about that, right? Like the courage that it takes to tell someone that you're gay, the courage that it might take someone to say you're queer.
Mm.
And I think that there's a lot, like, I wish we had more time to unpack that in itself, right? Just,
Mm.
and we may come back to it. We probably will. We
Mhm.
always do.
Mhm.
But I think that that's something that I wish more people talked enough about, this idea of how much courage it takes to check, like when you're filling out paperwork, or you go into a doctor's office, right? Or you're filling out a job, right? You could easily put hetero, when they ask you, are you straight, bi or whatever, you could easily check heterosexual, right? But the fact that you keep checking queer, the fact that you keep checking gay, or same gender loving or whatever, there's so much power in that. And I really think that your brother's response really speaks to that. But I'm gonna save my other thought for our next segment.
Okay, work. Well, in
Mhm.
that case, y'all, because I love this idea of incorporating audience feedback in real time. Now, my feedback is that we got to take a quick break so a bitch can get a snack. We'll be back in just a bit.
Right, y'all. So this week we are gonna go ahead and get back into our healing bag for how you healing. And one of the things I peeped on your story when all of this was happening, which I love and I think is really smart. And I want to throw this out. So as we are continuing to grow the show, and as we're continuing to make more space for our
Mm-hmm.
kind of, and this was, I will say, I want to shout out to the listener who sent us an email a couple of weeks ago. That is really what kind of started us on this way of being like, well, why don't we start
Mm.
having, you know, feedback or voice notes or whatever incorporated. So we'll be
Mhm.
putting on both, our personal and on the page social medias. We'll be calling out for people to give us voice notes, and who knows, your
Yeah.
voice note may get read on the show. But with that being said, I love the idea that we are leaning into the different words that we've used to describe ourselves, and even some of these words being very hurtful or having like hurtful experiences connected to them. And so for this week's How You Healing, I wanted to talk about the process a little bit of what it means to reclaim them, right? So we know these words, we know that some of these words may have hurt us, but also a lot of these words are words that we've reclaimed. And the question is, do you think that it's possible to reclaim really any of these words, considering that a lot of these words come from really sad or negative places? I know for me, I really learned how to reclaim things through media specifically. And that's why I said I wanted to kind of hold my thought from your brothers, kind of thinking about the N word. Growing up, I used to always be so kind of sin. Like I would always kind of like, ugh, why does everyone use, the word nigga? Why nigga this, nigga that, nigga that? And then I had to learn that a lot of the disdain that I had for the N word, the word nigga, came from not only just white supremacy, but it also came from
Mm.
it came from the idea of what I'm starting to kind of call like white perfectionism, this idea that black people have to
Mm,
show up
mhm,
in a very white way in order to
mhm,
be able. And so I don't like using
mhm,
the N-word because it's so degrading. No, you don't want me using the N-word because you don't want me to feel empowered. Okay, got it. And so that for
mm.
me is what I've started to realize with certain words, right? I don't go around calling everybody a nigga, but I will use it if I need to use it, especially if I'm in community or with other black people. And so I think
Yeah.
for me, a part of it is I think there's specifically, right, using the word queer, using the word nigga, there's a lot of joy in a lot of that, specifically in talking openly with people you love about certain topics, even when it comes down to harm, right? Them niggas did me wrong. Them queens over there are problematic, or I don't fuck with them queens over there, right? Like that
Mm,
kind of stuff
mhm,
for me makes me feel like, oh, okay, I'm a part of a community and people got me and they hear me. And I'll be very transparent too. It's not to say that it's not hard to, it's not hard for me to put into words or how to deal with or navigate how to reclaim a word. Because I will be transparent in
mm,
saying that even sometimes fat, I make jokes about being fat, and I feel like that's just the way I deal with, you know, the
mm,
feelings that come up with being fat. And I can see people, "Oh, baby, don't call yourself that." And it's like, "No, I'm fat."
mm,
And that's okay. Like, it's okay. Fat is not a dirty word unless you make it a dirty word. So, I think
mm,
it's a little bit of both and, right? I think reclaiming words is a both and. Yes, they can hurt. Yes, they may have hurt attached to them, but they also can be fun. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you don't like the word nigga, then this may not be the show you want to keep listening to, because I'm gonna keep using it. What about you, Joho?
So one thing you pointed towards is once again we discussed on the show before, but like how much representation matters for you, so that you feel like you reclaim through media, right? Like it's so important to see people who reflect us talk in ways that empower us and or give us more language or vernacular to speak about ourselves. So I think that is like so powerful. I think often about I think often about this group trip I went on when I was younger, and this girl was like, she made a comment of that like media isn't important and media isn't really helpful or useful to people, and I was like, media literally drives culture, but like go off, sis. And this moment where I'm like, yeah, media drives culture, media drives in some ways, like in some ways horribly so, in some ways it shouldn't, in some ways it absolutely does, and it should, in the ways of which people are able to see themselves more and feel empowered more by seeing themselves. And so I just
Mhm,
want to give a lot of like gratitude to that. I think my thoughts on reclaiming words. Hmm. So I think about reclaiming myself. Is it possible to reclaim words? I think, yeah, I mean, absolutely yes. That's how I feel. I've reclaimed a lot of words for myself. I reclaim fat. I've reclaimed queer. I think it depends on how it's used and what my relationship to that like abuse is, right? Like people have abused me with the word fat. They've abused me with the word queer. They've
yeah,
abused me with with other words. And I think when I've had to interrogate what my relationship to that abuse has been and to that
amen.
word then, right? Because then I think about, okay,
Mhm,
is the issue the word itself or the way it's used against me, right? Because like for queer, when I actually did the work to understand queer and how many people use the word queer, and like really understand that queer just means peculiar or odd, right? And people
Mhm.
use it as a way of othering me or dehumanizing me.
Right.
I'm then able to separate the two and say, oh, I actually love queer because I love the idea of being odd or strange. Like I identify with being like the misfit or the quote unquote freak. Right, that shit
Oh,
makes me feel
yes.
good about myself. And so
Yes.
like why would I want to be normal? Right? I often think about Halloween Town where the late Debbie Reynolds said, "Being normal is vastly overrated." Like it is, and I don't want to be like that. And so
Mhm.
when I think through that lens, I realize that people who have used queer against me actually have no power over me anymore, and I can reclaim this word for myself. The
Yeah.
same one for fat, right? Like fat literally just means descriptor. I think a lot about folks like Tess Holiday and Gabby Fresh, like all the folks who have done this work in like fat liberation work, and but then also like from the 60s, of fat acceptance movement, and how the words fat were really just used as a descriptor for us, and people then
Yeah.
use it as a harmful tool. And these are the words that I've been able to say,
Mhm.
you no longer have power over me when you use this word against me. One, because I love being that shit. So you call me fat or queer? Yeah, girl, and like that's my favorite parts about me. So I don't know why you think that would hurt me. Like, and it's sad. It's sad that you think it would hurt me. Because
Right,
that to me
right.
tells me that it would hurt you. And
Mhm.
my child, you need to figure that out for yourself, why it
And a
hurts
lot
you
of
and how you come
right,
up.
a lot of it is just and I hope and pray one of these days it keeps coming up. So I feel like one of these days we gotta really sit down and we gotta nail down a convo about this. But what I like to refer to as mirror work. Someone had
Mm,
said to me earlier this week that a lot of what and I even think of what Angelica said last week, right?
yeah.
This idea of being a mirror, right? This idea that oftentimes people like to project these words onto you because they
Yeah.
are not comfortable with them. And so when you can say, "Okay, tell me something I don't know," it's kinda like it's
Yeah.
calling a black person black. It's like, "I know I'm black. You
It
remind me
is
every 5 seconds," you know? Mhm.
it is a funny choice,
Yeah.
but in a choice that people use words that would harm them to harm others. It
Uh-huh.
is an interesting and funny and like sad choice that as a person you might feel so upset about something that you would use a word that you know would be harmful to you to harm others. And I think, and
Mhm.
again, right, like so to me, the reclamation comes all the way down to depends on who is using it and how they're
How
using
they're
it.
using it. Yeah.
Like, and I'll say I feel suspect of straight folks, or I feel suspect of like cis hetero folks who use the word queer. Like that to
Mm.
me, I'm sus of that. You have to earn with me to use that word with me. You have to earn like
Right.
not just my respect but my trust, because there are many folks who will use like in queer movements, right, will use that word to display solidarity and actually not do nary a thing to display solidarity. Like they use
Work.
the word to say I'm
Mhm.
with you, but you aren't with us at the picket line, you aren't with us and the marches, you aren't with us at the ballot, like you aren't with us at all. You just use the word to show that you're with us in terms of like language. Girl, that is not with us at all,
Yeah,
right?
you're not
I had
trying to
someone
get me a
actually
job. Yeah, all of it.
okay. You
Uh-huh.
ain't trying to get my rights secured. You ain't trying to like
Hello,
help me. Like,
hello.
you ain't trying to help me find a man. Like you are doing nothing for me right now. So
Well, talk
don't use
about
the
it.
word queer. Like
Mhm.
I'm so like for me, like folks have to earn that. Like right, like that's the difference between like being like an ally or an accomplice to me, right? Like
Mhm.
again, as Angelica said in the last episode, like accomplices get their hands dirty, and
Yeah.
allies don't do that. And so like if you're gonna be an accomplice, you have put in the work to use these types of words with me. If you just an ally who's just sitting here saying like, I love queer folks, you're all safe with me, girl. We ain't
Mhm.
safe. Like safety is actually not a guarantee, and you cannot guarantee me safety by saying that you guarantee me safety. You have
Yeah.
to ensure my safety by the actions that you do. And so I feel like I reclaim for myself, and I'm very quick to be like, don't use that word. The word is not for you at all because you have no reason or right to claim that word for yourself.
Take it.
Um, so yeah, and and I love the idea of reclamation. I think as some of the voice notes said before too, the idea of having agency to decide for yourself is what's most powerful, right? Like the
Yeah.
one thing that white supremacy does not want is for Black folks or queer folks, trans folks, or anyone in between the spectrum
Anybody.
of being a person of color. One thing they don't want is for us to decide for ourselves what we want to do with our lives. That is the biggest power that we have. And so, like, reclamation truly does start with self. And also, if you don't want to reclaim that word, that is also okay too, right? Like, no one's prescribing that you have to reclaim the word queer, reclaim the word fat, or reclaim XYZ for yourself. Like, you don't have to do any of that for yourself. Whatever makes you feel safest, I love that for you.
Mhm.
And like, what the work you have to do is just to figure out what words you can hold for yourself, and remember that the words that people will use against you is because they want to use it against you because they want to disempower you.
Yep.
And
Yep.
we have a decision to make of how much more will I let someone disempower me over some bullshit, because I'm
Yep.
not that's the game I'm not playing.
Let me tell you something. Joho produced the hell out of this episode. I have to even I just have to say that. Like, I know that this week I want to give you your flowers. You produced the hell out of this episode because I
Thank
think
you.
this is a topic that we don't talk enough about is the idea of words being used towards you to disempower you. It's the same
Mm,
notion of why Black women oftentimes are being told that they are aggressive, that they are, or even I've even been told that, your
bitch.
personality is a lot. You're a
Hey.
lot. Right? Certain words are used in order to make you small. And so I think that as much as we were talking about queer and we're talking about the rainbow, I just want to say the rainbow, the word of rainbows earlier in the show, I really appreciate you bringing to the forefront that it is about the word, right? It's not just about the reclamation. It's like, yeah, there are all of these processes that we have to go through because, our lexicons are so vast and there's so many things
Mhm.
behind, there's so much intention behind words and how words are used. But what I will say is that I think that there's something to be said about the ways that people use words to disempower other people or to make other people feel small.
Mhm.
And I think that's the takeaway. Like, that's the thing I hope people take away from this episode is to think
Mm.
about the ways that certain words are used against you and the power you have in either taking those words back or saying, that ain't the word for me. Like, that has nothing to do
Mm.
with me. So when people say, "Oh, John, you're a lot," I go, "Okay, you may think I'm a lot because you're projecting. That I'm not a
Mm.
lot." And maybe you're too little. You're right? Catch up. Come on now. You got to catch
Yeah.
up. Come on, catch up. So I say all of that to say that we have to catch up with our break or we are going to be in trouble with the network. So when we get back, we are going to dive into y'all's favorite segment. Yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, Pam will be back in a sec. All right, girl, you want to go first this week? No?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I you know, no, I know, I do. Sorry, I do. Sorry, I was, I muted myself for a second.
I
Yes,
love
I do,
catching you off
because
guard.
what's fresh on my mind is you said two things in the last segment that have got me in line with my Yes Man Pam. So first of all, Yes Man Pam is a show I started watching called The Traders on Peacock.
I told you. I
Bitch,
told you.
I, bitch,
I told you.
this show is an amazing show. This is peak
Told
reality
you.
TV.
Yes.
Like, people need to take fucking notes. Hosted by is it Alan
It's Alan
Cunning, right? Or
Cummings. Yeah.
okay,
Alan
Alan
Cummings. Mhm.
Cummings thing. Okay, because
Cummings,
Alan
yeah.
Cunning,
Cummings.
may he rest in
Alan
peace.
Cummings.
Harry Potter, Alan Cummings. This show is a slew of reality TV stars assemble for the ultimate murder mystery game,
Man.
which is my absolute game of choice, by the way. And this season is a all-star cast. We have Peppermint from Drag Race, Phaedra Parks from Real Housewives. We actually have several Real Housewives. Kevin from Bling Empire, folks. Parvati and Sandra from The Survivor. Like, people who have like done games, like actual challenging games, right? Or
Yes.
like the game of entertainment or Drag Race, right? It is everything. But two things you said in the last segment. The idea of I'm a spoiler for people who have not watched the show. I'm so sorry if I am. The show's been on for
Spoiler.
like
Spoiler alert.
at
Yeah.
least the 8 weeks and never just like to get together. But Peppermint was the first to be banished in the show, and
Cool.
I was upset because I was upset that she did not pull up the like, y'all are paying me as an angry black woman card because Trishelle, or Trashelle, I would call her Trashelle,
She's
literally
racist.
was like, Pep
She's
okay,
racist.
because Peppermint reacted rightfully so when this bitch said, "If I'm dead tomorrow, you know who did it, right?" Like I also would be like, "What?" To Peppermint's face was actually not remotely that mad at all. Period. But Trishelle was like paying her as an angry black woman, and
Mhm,
I'm surprised that Peppermint did not like right. That's the idea of her using language to disempower and make Peppermint feel small. Right? I'm surprised that Peppermint did not come out and say, "You will not pay me as an angry black person here." Like that's not what's gonna happen. Because if it was me, bitch, oh, I would have used out Trishelle. Like Trishelle, you being racist as fuck right now.
uh-huh,
I am mad that she was banished. I want to see what more looks she can do. But then now to your other point, right? Phaedra, my girl. My girl, Phaedra Parks, on this show. I'm only 6 episodes in, so I'm gonna finish it myself. But my girl, Phaedra Parks, is doing the damn thing, and she said to one of one of the people on the round table, because someone was like calling her extra, right?
mhm.
And and she said and she said, "I do too much because you do too little."
You
Okay, so when
do
someone says you
too
do too much,
little.
bitch,
Mhm,
okay.
mhm, mhm.
I was like, my girl Phaedra, she is really just giving out to people, and she is, in my opinion, the best player on this show. Like,
Yes. Yeah.
I won't. Well, actually, from episode one, y'all that she's actually one of the traders, and she has to act as if she's not a trader. This bitch is playing the game right. Like I actually watched only just to see how she performs in this. Like she is so
Right.
good. This show is everything. If y'all have not
It
watched the
is
show, y'all
good.
get on it.
I need
John,
to
I will
watch
give
the
gratitude.
last episode, but yeah, go ahead.
I will give gratitude to you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me access Peacock because
I told
without
you.
it, I would be nowhere. This is so good. Now, my no man Pam. To be serious, my no man Pam is just to the CDC for their new isolation guidelines for all respiratory viruses, including COVID. That includes the flu, influenza, RSV, all the above. Influenza, the flu, the same thing. So I know I said that twice, but regardless, basically, if you are sick but are improving symptoms and have not, if you have no fever without medication for at least 24 hours, then you're able to enter the world again. Though it is suggested to be cautious around others for 5 days, meaning physical distancing, masking, suggesting clean air, blah, 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 blah. It's a no man Pam for me because I know I can't trust toes enough as it is. I know people will take this and be reckless with their health and the health
Mhm,
of others. I live in a very interesting intersection of like COVID safety of like, have I felt less danger than before? Yes. Like
mhm,
do I do more things, right? Like to do more things and feel more safe in some spaces, yes. And also there are many spaces where I don't still feel safe and I will still wear a mask in many of those spaces. And there's
mhm.
some spaces in which I'm like, I feel better. Or like, I've not been so stringent upon my friends who do things that I trust and love that I know that they aren't trying to get me sick, right? If it happens, like we we'll work on it together. But
Yeah.
like I'm not sitting in a place of distrust. But I live in this place where people that I follow, right, are on two ends of the spectrum, or I would say not two ends, like one, like some are more moderate and some are really much more like this is a horrible thing, and I believe it is a horrible thing. People always say when the pandemic was here, I'm like, it's still here, girl. Like it's actually still happening. People are still being disabled.
Right
People are still
outside our
being
door.
attacked and killed like every day. So like let's calm down. So I know people will be reckless with their health and the health of others. It makes me really sad and upset because like if I am in public spaces where I see folks masking, my mask will be on. Like I will carry it with
Mhm.
me wherever I go because what I not want to do is endanger folks who are vul-
Vulnerable.
vulnerable. The folks who my life who I know that we've already worked through our mask thing together. Like, I will be unmasked with them because I trust them, they trust me, and vice versa. But if I have a tinge of a sickness, girl, I'm out. I'm not hanging out. I'm not going to the
If
club.
you're
I'm
sick,
not seeing
stay
you. Like
home.
stay
Yes.
the fuck home.
Mhm.
And if I feel better, because it says right, if you feel better, but if you still have symptoms but feel better, girl, no.
Still
If you
stay
have a
home.
symptom, bitch, keep your ass at home. Keep your
Same.
ass at home. If
Yes.
you have a tick on your throat still, if you have a cough still, bitch, if it has not been 10 days if it's not been 10 days, do not talk to me anymore.
Girl, stay
I have
home.
no just I don't have time for it. I don't have energy for it. Like people can't afford to get sick, neither can I. So like stop trying to get each other sick. And
Yeah.
I know, and also the employers, what I also hate about this new guidance is that employers can use this to return their workforce to the office at a much
Mhm.
faster rate, and that's horrible, right? Because
Yep.
now if employers can say, well, like according to CDC guidelines, if you are feeling better and haven't had a fever, but still sick, you can come out to the office, and
Mm.
we suggest you wear a mask, but you don't have to wear a mask. Ah, girl,
I
if I'm in office and someone comes to my cubicle coughing up a storm and they're not wearing a mask and they're sick, bitch. Oh, I'm
I'm
suing.
fighting.
I'm
Yeah,
suing.
I'm
Like
ready to
I'm fighting. I'm
fight.
suing. Like it's a wrap for them.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, you're not wrong, and I think we really have to have a come to terms and a come to Jesus with the ways that capitalism, this country, is really that's the goal is to get you up out of here. Because and I saw someone talking about this on Twitter the other day. Someone was saying that, you know, the world didn't stop for the people who passed from COVID. So what makes it think it's going to stop for you, for the people who lived, who survived it? And
Oof.
it's just,
Oof.
it really is very, you know, I keep hating to bring them, I hate to bring the mood down, but as someone who lost their best friend to COVID, as someone who has family members that are dealing with long COVID stuff, I actually have a friend who has to have surgery on their respiratory because of COVID, right? They didn't start having
Mm,
massive respiratory issues until they caught COVID in 2020. And now for the last 4 years, it's something they've been dealing with. And now they're in the
mm,
process of getting ready to have surgery because of it. So I say all of it to say, you know, I really think that we really need to really step back as a people and just think about the ways that we are feeding into this capitalistic society and the ways that we're working
mm,
people to death. And I say that as someone who, again, this has nothing to do with the segment, but rest in peace to a colleague of mine who used to work at my old job. I had talked about this earlier on
mm.
social this week. I had a colleague who passed away in their office at work, on the job, was at work and passed away in their office, an old colleague of mine. And it just it really, right, it really has woken me up to this idea of how much I'm willing to give of myself to it's really again, it has really changed, like hearing that. And this is the second, so I also want to say this, and I don't want to name the place, but I will say this is the second
Is
person
it where I'm thinking? Is it where I'm thinking though? Is it where I'm
before that.
thinking?
Before that.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it there was also another person during the pandemic when we were actually closed down. They were at work because they were required to be the one of the only people at work. Another
Ugh,
person passed away in their office at work. And so it's just it just keeps showing me like these
mhm,
I cannot say it enough. These companies don't care about you. They
mhm,
don't
mhm,
care about us. They only care about their bottom line. Please make sure y'all are protecting yourselves and doing whatever you need to do to protect yourself. So I'm gonna lift it up a little bit. I'm gonna come down and then we're gonna close out the show. So for my yes ma'ams this week, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who continues to say my name, our name in rooms that we aren't in. I don't know if
mhm,
they listen to the show, but I definitely wanted to shout out my friend Risha Howard from next door and also my friend Miles Worthington over from Worthy. If you all listen to this show, or if any of you are close to me, you know that the two of them are good friends of mine. Risha was a good friend of mine I met from back in our heyday at Twitter when I was doing some work over or doing some consulting work with Twitter. I met Miles through another friend who I learned has a marketing team that is just absolutely phenomenal. And I want to plug them and say if you are looking for marketing, they've done stuff with Max. They've done stuff. They used to work for Netflix. They've done some really
mhm.
and very intentional. Their entire staff is Black. Like if you are a person who really wants to work for a good team, Miles is where it's at. And so I'm gonna make that my Black business of the day is Worthy.
Yeah.
Support Miles Worthington and the work that they're doing over at Worthy. They're absolutely fantastic. But I definitely want to say we speak their names, but I also speak the names of people who are still saying beautiful things about what me and Joho do over here in the rooms that we're
Mhm.
not in, because they definitely, I will say it definitely gets back to us. It definitely gets back to us. Um,
Absolutely.
okay, so before I get into my silly no man Pam, I'm also going to say this about my no man Pam. And if folks want to pay me to dive deeper into it, my inbox is open. but I'm not going to be doing any explanations to people about this without a W-9 attached. I need people to stop
Yes.
saying if they are not black or black trans people to stop saying say their name and rest in power. Um, that is not. I'm just saying. I'm
Okay.
just saying that say their names was intended for black women who are often killed by law
Mhm.
enforcement
Speak on it.
and oftentimes do not get the police coverage that they should. And it's not to say that white trans people don't get the proper coverage that they deserve. Two things can be true at one time. Yes, they both don't get the proper coverage that they deserve. However, it was black women who specifically created this to speak about the injustices that black women and black trans women
Mm,
face in media when it comes to brutality or killings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we got to come up with this. And I also have caught some heat, and I got a lot of trolls in my mentions, but I don't care that wanted to fight me over this notion of saying rest in power to the young man who set himself on fire to protest Palestine. Now I'm not going to go into that because that
mm,
is not what this is about. What I am saying is you cannot say rest in power to a white man who already has lived his entire life in power based off of his race. I'm just saying you can say rest in solidarity for what he did.
mm.
You can
Mhm,
say
mhm,
rest in truth, right? Because he felt like what he was doing was truth,
mm,
right? You can
mhm,
say all
mhm.
of those things, but rest in power, that's a black thing. That's for black people who are
Whew.
fighting injustice. That's what rest in power means. We can't rest. We don't get any power while we're here. So we're saying the fight that you fought while you were here, you fought for that power. So rest in that. Okay. As for white men who are still speaking truth to power, right? So I don't want to take it away from this
Mhm,
gentleman who did what he did. And again, I'm not I don't want to get into the minutia of whether what he did was right or wrong. That has nothing to do with this conversation. What I'm
mhm,
trying to
mhm,
say is that rest in power is about black and brown people who spend their whole lives on the front line fighting for power in different instances and then end up losing their life or end up dying. Again, thinking about what's his name's daughter, Eric Gartner's daughter, right? Erica Gartner. She fought for
mm,
her father's that would be a rest in power. So this is not an argument. This is a teachable moment. I just want to I
mm,
basically want to teach the children. Now, let me get back to the silly. My other no man Pam this week is I want to say that I am tired of being nickeled and dimed to death. What the hell is a processing fee? What the hell is a convenience fee? What the hell is a handling fee? Well, I can handle it my goddamn self. I don't want to pay for you to don't handle it. If you want me to come to the warehouse to pick it up, I'll come to the warehouse and handle it. But don't charge me for it. I'm sick of it. You're making us pay for apples, for grapes, the things God gave us for free. You will burn in hell. I am so sick of being nickeled and dimed for everything. And what I will say is, I know this is
mm.
stupid, and I understand. Like, I want to make it very clear that I know I'm yelling into the mic. I also want to know. I want y'all to understand that I understand what it is when I give this explanation, but also I just want you all to understand how tired I am of capitalism. So long story short, I bought something and it was the wrong size. And when I reached out to the person on eBay, I said, "Can I send this back?" They said, "No. You have to sell it on your own because we don't take stuff back." I said, "Fine. Okay, I got it." So I sold it. And basically, eBay tells me, "Okay, you sold it for this price, plus they are paying the $14.95 for shipping." I said, "Okay, bet." Because the thing is that said thing has to go to an authentic the
Yeah.
eBay authentication. Everything you sell through eBay now has to go through authentication, which is great.
Okay,
I
bet.
get it. Yeah,
Mhm,
I get it. People are selling fake clothes, fake shoes, fake bags. So now they have to
mhm,
be sent to an authentic. Okay, got it. Fantastic. So that's what the $14.95 is for. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, that $14.95 covers the box and the shipping, right? Oh, but it doesn't. So I get to the FedEx and the lady says, "Oh, I see that the person paid the $14.95 for the shipping, but you don't have a box for said item, a box or bag for said item." And I said, "Oh, but then what's the shipping for?" "Oh, the shipping is just covering the shipping. You have to pay for the box." What? So now I had to go into my pocket and pay an additional $7 for the box for the thing to be sent to the authenticator, the authentic, whatever. You get what I'm saying.
Authenticator,
Yeah, the
authenticator.
authenticator. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have to pay for that. So what are we really paying for? What's the $14.95 for? And I know it's
I know.
stupid, but I want to know. You make it make sense. I am so tired of it. It's just like in LA when you go to park and it's $40 to park. What?
Mm,
What?
mm.
$40? That is half a tank of gas for most people, half a tank of gas. This is like I think I'm just starting to get like I don't even know what to call it. Like I'm just getting so fatigued at how expensive it is to live. And it is so annoying. Like every 5 seconds you're having to pay for something.
Yes.
It's like you can't even leave
Mhm,
your house anymore because everything costs.
mhm.
Everything costs. And it's just nothing. And it's not to say that things should be free, but I'm just saying, like, my God, can we get a break?
But no, I mean, I think you're absolutely right though. Like it is egregious how like where people float and find extra costs to charge things
Uh-huh.
for
Hmm.
because it's true. Like we have a privilege of being able to afford it, and like that's a privilege. But right if we have this frustration ourselves having the money to do it,
Right.
the folks who don't like what are they actually able to do? Like
They
what can
can't.
they do to
They
spend?
can't.
They can't do anything. So I mean, it
And
really
then
there's
people
so many. Yeah.
no, not to cut you off, but then people want to get an attitude with the folks who are houseless and unhoused. The how the what it's not their fucking fault. Everything is
Mhm.
expensive. I tell people all the time, yes, I'm fortunate that I have pretty much 2 full-time jobs. I'm grateful for it. But I know it's by the grace of God and also by me not again, by me giving up so much of myself that I'm in the
Yeah.
predicament that I'm in, right? I wake up every day and say, "Yes, I'm gonna do these 2 full-time jobs because I really don't have a choice." But it's still
Mhm,
frustrating that there are people out
mhm,
there who are saying there are people that I know who are extremely qualified that cannot find jobs. There are people
mhm,
out there that I know who are literally saying, "Somebody please help me find a job because I will be homeless in a month," on LinkedIn. There are so many people that are at jobs now that are being mentally abused and being manhandled and being basically run over at their jobs because they know that
mhm,
if I quit this job, I may not be able to find another job. So it's not that people are not trying, it's because the system is continuing to be set up for all of us to fail. And even me, a person with 2
mhm,
jobs, is looking out and saying, I'm also, excuse me, fucking stuck because I can't even afford a home. Like I really want to buy a home, but and I know people, well, you're buying and we've had this conversation. Well, you're buying Louis bags and you're going on trips and you're paying for this because why not enjoy my life now?
mhm,
Because I don't know how much longer I'm gonna fucking be able to enjoy it because everything is
mhm,
so goddamn expensive. Who knows how long I'll have this? So it's just it's just something to really like it really grinds my gears how like I really thought I think for me the other thing is, I was oh god, we're getting so long on time and I know we got to go. I was sold on this idea that if I had a doctorate, that if I did all of these things in life, that I'd be able to afford life. And now life is so fucking expensive, and it's just
um,
hard. And and what's harder for me, it's not even about me. It's so hard because I'm such an empath, and I see it's so hard because I'm hurt for them, and I don't have the means to be able to
mm,
say, let me help you find a job, let me put you on, let me connect you to somebody. It's just it's I have a friend now in a group chat going off about how they didn't get the job that they went up for and how they're worried because their contract's getting ready to it just sucks. It just fucking sucks. So
yeah.
I hate to end on that note, but I will say like we over here at the Black Fat Femme, we hear you, we see you, and it is really unfair that we're in the place that we're in this world. Don't even get me started on politics. Okay. Anyway, with that being said, please send your thoughts, your voice notes, your feedback, and your email to BlackFatFemmePod at gmail.com. You can also send us your thoughts via social media by interacting with our post on Instagram and Twitter by using the handle BlackFatFemmePod. Queen Joho, when you're not out here ready to do a roundhouse kick, where can the dolls find you?
Well, first of all, stay ready. You gotta get ready, okay? But
Amen.
if not that, you can find me at Joe Daniels across all the socials or my update website, JordanDaniels.com. If not, they're in my house, laid up on my couch, just binging all the good TV shows because I'm tired of people. I'm just tired of people. I'm
Amen.
tired of
Amen.
people. I'm tired of spending money on things. I'm tired of
Amen.
y'all making me spend my money on things I don't need to spend my money on. So I'm done with y'all. I'm gonna just stay home.
And even to add that, MGM Plus is going up. Instead of it being $6.99, it is now going up to $7.99. Netflix is
What's
all
MGM
MGM
for?
Plus. They have a lot of great
Too
shows,
much.
specifically from.
Doing too much. The way the biggest scam was streaming services.
Yep,
That's the biggest scam. How they
it's all
said
cable.
we
It's still
stopped the issues
cable.
of cable. And then actually real quick, Amazon Prime. I know y'all fucking lying having your $3 plan to not have ads anymore. Bitch, I know you lying to me talking about saying that that Prime Video was free before when you had Prime, and now you're charging $3 a month for no ads. Girl.
They're getting ready to go back.
Girl. I
It's
mean,
going
it's free bucks, but like, girl.
It's
Oh, you gotta be cut
all
up.
going back to what it used to be, where we're
Woo,
all
child.
paying. We literally have nothing else to give. I'm so over it. Anyway, as for me, you can catch me throwing tomatoes at Jimmy on Love is Blind and speaking life into AD because she truly deserves so much better than that man that she's with. And she out here playing herself. If you know, you know. I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting into it. I just can't wait to see there. We're literally at the end of Love is Blind. We have the marriage ceremony. So I have a feeling I know what three are getting married, which I really don't think that they should be getting married. All of them need to be going to therapy before they get married. And then they have the reunion. But all that to be said, Jimmy is just he is gaslighting the hell out of this poor lady, and the poor lady Chelsea, she crying everywhere, and mama ain't got no self-esteem. And I want her to feel better about who she is and to know that she too, you know what, I said AD deserves better, but Chelsea deserves better too. My God, Chelsea, I hope you get the love and the joy that you deserve, because Jimmy ain't it. Anyway, you can follow me at Dr. John Paul, and you can visit the website www.drjohnpaul.com. I will also say I will not be, if you send me an email or you send me a response about my comments about I'm just making it clear. I'm not addressing anything about Love is Blind. I'm not going to be addressing your responses to Love is Blind. I said what I said about Jimmy. Jimmy is trash. Okay. I just want to make sure that y'all know that's how I feel, and I'm standing on business with that. So you can save it. All right. With that being said, we want to thank our supervising producers, Rebecca Ramos and Bei Wang, for handling of the logistics of this show, and executive super producer. I want to make sure I say super producer, Anna Hostia, and everyone over at iHeartMedia for keeping the show up and running. And I also want to shout out Will. Will, you have been listening to the shows, and it makes my heart so happy to know that somebody who has so many things on their slate is listening to the show and is engaging with the show and is saying how much they love how much we've grown since we've set out. Will, you are truly a gem. I love you down, and I thank you for everything that you've done for us over here at Black Fat Femme. We also want to shout out our wonderful editor, engineer, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Chris Rogers, for all that they do on this show and also on the use of the tubes. Thank you so much, Chris Rogers, for all that you do on the use of the tubes. This has been another show. Thank you for listening. Please stay black, fat, femme, and fabulous. And remember, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. I love us for real.
Period.
Bye.
Bye.